Okay, so we are doing the second half of 4.2. So let me write that down. 4.2, part 2. So let me go through an example with you. If we have this equation, for example, we have y equals negative 3 over 4, x plus 2. So you're all very good, I feel, at this point with graphing this out, picking out the y-intercept and the slope, and knowing how to navigate your way on the x and y axis. Are we okay with that? Okay, so then let's say I give you a, remember this from yesterday, a t-chart or table of values, whatever you want to call it. And again, it could be written vertically or horizontally. But let's say some of the information is given to you on here, and we want to fill in the rest of it. So let's say we are given these values for the x and y, but we need to fill in, like for the first one here, if x is 0, we need to figure out what y is going to be here. Do you all know how to do that? Okay, let's go through it together. So we'll go through a few examples, and this will allow you to do the next part in the workbook. If x is 0 for this first one here, I'll color code it so you can keep track of it. In my equation, where does that 0 value go? Yeah, we're going to plug it in here for x. So for this first one here, we're going to say y equals negative 3 over 4 times 0 plus 2. Do you see that I've kept everything else the same here, but I took the 0 from the table of values and I plugged it into the x value in my equation. So far, so good? Okay, we love these because what happens when you have a fraction multiplied by 0 or anything multiplied by 0? It's going to get wiped out. So according to this, what's my y value there? The only thing left there is 2, so I can fill in a 2 on here. Are we good so far? Okay, so then let's say the same thing's happening but over here, but this time the y value is 0. What do I do now in my equation? Do you know what that's called? It starts with an S when we're plugging it in. Substitution. Good. So in my equation, do you guys see where the y was? I'm going to put a 0 there, and everything else stays the same. So this time I have this to work with. But this involves our algebra skills. If I want to get this x by itself, what's the first thing I need to get rid of or move? The plus 2. And algebra is all about opposites. So how do I get rid of the plus 2? I minus 2 on both sides. Everybody good with that? So what happens is we have negative 2 on the left side, and these cancel. So then I have negative 3 over 4x. We can do this step by step. If I want to get rid of the 4, and algebra is all about opposites, what's the opposite of what's going on here? How do I get rid of the 4? Nope. We're dividing by 4 here. What's the opposite of dividing by 4? We multiply both sides by 4. Everybody clear on that? There's a lot of algebra involved here. That's the hard part, I feel. So remember, algebra is all about opposites. So if I have it divided by 4, I want to multiply by 4 so that they cancel. So on my right side, I just have negative 3x now. And on the left side, what do I have? Negative 8, and if I just want x, how do I get rid of this negative 3? What do I do on both sides? Divide by negative 3, because negative 3 written beside x means they're being multiplied, right? So the opposite is dividing. Both sides by negative 3, which cancels this. So after all that hard work, what's my answer? Which didn't work out very nicely, but what is it? Is it negative? It's negative 8 over negative 3, so that's actually positive 8 over 3. So you know what I mean, that it didn't work out so nicely because it's a fraction, but that's okay because we don't have to use that point when we're graphing. We would like to use points that are whole numbers Because can you imagine graphing out 8/3 on a grid? That would be very hard to do. It wouldn't be very accurate. So then for this next one, let's say right here, if the x value is 4, I'm going to do that just down below here. So in my equation, I'll bring back the equation again. Y is what I'm trying to figure out. And I'd have -3/4 times 4. Oh, this is going to run into the other one. I'm going to get rid of this for a second. Plus 2. Everybody good with where I got all of that from? I just took my original equation here, and instead of x, I've plugged in this 4 right here. Everybody good with that? We also love when something like this happens, because what do we do if there's a 4 at the top and the bottom? We're multiplying by 4 and dividing by 4. Do you guys see that they simply cancel out? So we just have, after all that, y equals -3 plus 2. So what do we actually end up getting after doing that? Y equals -1. So in my chart, y equals -1. And this would be my answer for this part. Are we good with that so far? And do we have any questions? We're kind of okay with that? Okay, so let's do another example. Let's say this time I give you a graph. That's the point at 0, 2. And you have this point here that's at 3, 0. And so you have a graph that looks like this. I want you to write an equation for this. So we are working backwards this time. You're given a graph. You want to read the graph and come up with an equation. Here's how we do this. Remember that slope-intercept form? What does that look like? Y equals what? Do you remember? This is something we're going to have to know. It's going to come up year after year after year. What is it? Thank you. Y equals mx plus b. Everybody good with that? So do you see in the equation, we need to fill in the slope, and actually let's color code this. We need to fill in the slope, and we need to fill in the y-intercept. Just by looking at the graph, can you tell me what the y-intercept is? Yeah. +2. Remember, you guys, that's the point where x is 0 and where it crosses the y-axis. So on here, I can say, okay, I can fill in the +2. There's half the battle. Does that make sense so far? Then for the slope, remember slope is rise over run. Rise over run. So if I'm going from this point to this point here, do you see that I'd have to go down 2? How do I write that as my slope in my fraction? What's down 2? How do I show that? -2 over, okay, so this time let's say we're going 1, 2, 3 to the right. So would that be +3 or -3? +3. And I leave the other two things as they were. It's still y, and this is still x. So this would actually be my equation after going through that. So we sort of did the opposite of what we had been doing, where we went backwards. We worked backwards to figure out what we would get here. Okay, so 6, 7, and 9 are the questions you're going to do. 6, 7, and 9, you're going to do all of them as well. And that's it for 4.0.